My wolf kills everyone." The words fell into the trading post like a blade dropped on stone. Violet Marsh froze where she stood, fingers clenched around the handle of her worn carpetbag. She had been hoping, foolishly, that the voice was not meant for her, but it was. The man stood near the counter, towering over the room as if the low ceiling had been built for smaller creatures. Wolf pelts draped his shoulders, still thick with the smell of smoke and blood. A long rifle rested easily across his back, and at his feet, the wolf, not a dog, not a half-tame thing, a real wolf, massive and gray, shoulders rolling as it moved, amber eyes tracking every breath in the room, its lips pulled back slightly, teeth pale and merciless. The trading post had gone silent. Even the stove seemed to hold its breath. "I'm serious," the man continued, his voice calm, almost bored. "He's killed before. He won't hesitate again." The post owner swallowed. "Mr. Thorne, I just don't think anyone here is suited for— I'll pay $50 a month." That did it. A murmur rippled through the room. $50 was more than most men earned in a season. Heads turned, eyes flicked, then slid away. No one stepped forward. Violet's heart pounded so hard it made her lightheaded. She had $11 left. Winter was closing fast. The cook's position she'd traveled 3 states for had already been filled. There would be no second advertisement, no kind miracle. At 265 pounds, Violet had learned what silence meant. It meant no one would save her. The man's pale eyes swept the room, dismissive. "Good. That makes this easier." Then Violet heard herself speak. "I'll take the job." The words felt unreal as they left her mouth. Every head turned. The wolf lifted its head. The man turned slowly, gaze locking onto her with unsettling intensity. He studied her, not with hunger or mockery, but with the same assessing stillness the wolf used. "You heard what I said," he replied. "My wolf kills people." Violet swallowed. Her knees trembled, but she forced herself not to step back. "I heard." "You won't be able to run fast." His eyes flicked, briefly honest. "You won't be able to fight him." "I don't intend to," she said quietly. "I just need work." The wolf stood. A low growl vibrated through the floorboards. Someone near the door edged back. The man did not move. "Ghost!" The wolf paused, muscles tight as coiled wire, then sat again, eyes never leaving Violet. "That," the man said, "is the last warning you'll get." Violet met his gaze, fear burning her throat, but something fiercer holding her in place. "I've survived worse than teeth." Something unreadable crossed his face. "Name," he said. "Violet Marsh." "I'm Elias Thorne." He turned to the owner. "Supplies for 2. Charge me." Then to Violet, "We leave at dawn. If you change your mind, don't be here." She nodded once. "I'll be here." As Elias turned away, Ghost's gaze lingered on her, sharp, curious, dangerous. And for reasons Violet could not explain, she did not feel hunted. She felt seen. Fear is loud when power announces itself, but courage often enters quietly, through a woman with nothing left to lose, standing still when everything tells her to run. Ask yourself this, honestly. When survival demands a choice between terror and surrender, which one truly requires more bravery? Dawn came thin and colorless. Violet arrived at the trading post early, breath fogging the air, carpetbag cutting into her palm. She half expected the door to be locked, the bargain withdrawn like a trick of light. Instead, Elias Thorne waited outside with a pack already strapped to his shoulders. Ghost sat at his heel. The wolf rose when Violet stepped closer, head lifting, ears pricked. The low rumble in his chest was not a growl so much as a warning that did not bother disguising itself. "Stand still," Elias said without looking at her. "Let him finish deciding." Violet froze. She did not reach for the bag. She did not meet the wolf's eyes. She focused on breathing, slow, steady, the way she had learned to do when a kitchen turned brutal and the heat closed in. Ghost circled her once, twice. His breath brushed her skirt. His nose traced the line of her sleeve. Then he'd stopped. Elias clipped the chain to his belt. "Mount up." They left the post without ceremony. No one waved. No one wished her luck. Violet did not look back. The trail climbed immediately, narrow and unforgiving. Elias rode a roan that moved like it knew every stone by name. Violet followed on a mule older than Patience, its gait steady but relentless. Ghost ranged ahead, a gray shadow slipping between trees. The first hour burned, the second tested. By the third, Violet's thighs trembled and her breath came short. She kept her eyes on Elias's back and measured her steps to his pace. Stopping felt like failure. Failure felt like being sent away. They broke by a creek near noon. Elias dismounted and poured water into a cup, setting it on a rock within her reach. "Drink," he said. She did, deeply, gratefully. "You can speak," he added, "if something's wrong." She wiped her mouth with her sleeve. "My boots rub." He nodded once. "Show me." The blisters were ugly, raw crescents at her heels, skin split from days on bad roads. Violet braced for impatience. Elias crouched, inspected the damage, and reached into his pack. He warmed salve between his palms and applied it carefully, then tore strips from a clean cloth and wrapped her feet with the efficiency of someone who had tended wounds without comment. "Those boots won't last," he said. "We'll fix that." She swallowed. "I can keep going." "I know," he replied. "That's not the point." They walked until the trees thickened and the light softened. Elias set camp in a hollow, protected from wind. He built a small fire, fed it until it breathed, and handed Violet the thicker blanket without discussion. Ghost lay on the far side of the flames, eyes open, watchful. That night, Violet slept in snatches. Every time she shifted, she felt the wolf's attention like a weight. She reminded herself of Elias's words, "Stand still, let him decide." Morning broke cold. They ate, packed, and moved. Days settled into a pattern. Climb, rest, climb again. Elias spoke rarely, but when he did, it mattered. Where to place a foot, when to drink, how to listen for the wind changing its mind. Violet listened. She learned to move without hurry. She learned that silence could be instruction rather than punishment. On the fourth day, snow dusted the high branches. The mule slipped once. Elias caught the lead without comment and steadied it until Violet found her balance. Ghost watched, ears flicking, then resumed his patrol. By dusk, they reached the cabin. It was set into stone as if the mountain had decided to keep it. Smoke rose straight from the chimney. A creek ran close enough to speak. Inside, the air held warmth and order, a stone hearth, shelves of preserved food, tools hung where hands would expect them. 2 doors opened off the main room. Elias set down his pack. "You'll take the room on the right." Violet nodded, relief easing a knot she had not named. "And Ghost?" she asked. "He sleeps where he chooses," Elias said. "Don't try to move him. Don't try to touch him. Let him learn you." She did. The days that followed were long and honest. Violet cooked what Elias brought, venison, rabbit, the last of dried beans. She learned the smokehouse, the root cellar, the way the fire liked to be fed. Elias ate without critique and left her space to find her rhythm. Ghost remained everywhere and nowhere. He did not approach. He watched. On the 8th night, Violet broke. It was small things that did it. A loaf burned on the bottom, a nail bent, the ache in her hands that would not quiet. She caught her reflection in the water bucket, round face, thick arms, the body she had learned to apologize for, and the old words returned, sharp and practiced. Nobody wants you. She slid down beside the hearth and let the tears come. She did not hear Ghost move. A cold nose brushed her cheek. Violet stilled. The rules raced through her mind. Don't run, don't scream, don't show fear. She did none of those things. She simply breathed. I'm sorry, she whispered. I didn't mean to disturb you. Ghost studied her with unsettling calm. Then he lowered himself, slowly, deliberately, and laid his massive head across her lap. The weight was astonishing, real, anchoring. Violet's hands hovered, then rested lightly in the coarse fur at his crown. She stroked once, then again. Ghost exhaled and closed his eyes. Elias stopped in the doorway, words caught in his throat. That's not possible, he said quietly. Violet looked up, tears still wet. I think he felt it. Elias stared at the wolf, then at her. Something shifted in his expression, not fear, not jealousy, recognition. He trusts people who understand pain, Elias said, people who don't pretend it away. Violet swallowed. Then maybe he understands me. Ghost did not move. Compassion is not proven by courage alone, but by restraint, by choosing not to exploit vulnerability when it appears. Sometimes the fiercest guardians are drawn to the quietest grief, recognizing a strength that does not need to announce itself. Ask yourself this. When you encounter someone the world has hardened, do you see only the threat? Or do you wonder what they have survived to still be standing? After that night, the cabin changed. Not in its bones. The stone hearth still held heat the same way. The creek still spoke its steady language, but in its breathing. Violet felt it in the way the rooms no longer pressed against her, in how the silence softened instead of sharpened. Ghost followed her now, not closely, not possessively. He simply chose her orbit. When Violet rose before dawn to stoke the fire, he lifted his head and watched until the flames caught. When she stepped outside to fetch water, he padded after her and sat facing the tree line, back to her knees, a living barrier that did not demand gratitude. Elias noticed everything and said very little. You don't have to change your habits for him, he said once, watching Ghost settle at Violet's feet while she kneaded dough. Just be what you are. Violet smiled faintly. I'm not sure I know what that is yet. That's all right, Elias replied. Neither did he. The days grew longer as winter approached in earnest. Violet learned the work not by instruction, but by invitation. Elias showed her the smokehouse and stepped back. He corrected her hands only when she asked. When she split logs unevenly, he reset them without comment and waited. She learned quickly, not because she was afraid of failure, but because no one was punishing it. In the evenings, Elias lingered after meals. He sharpened tools at the table while Violet mended clothes, the scrape of stone and the whisper of thread sharing the same space. Ghost lay between them, breathing slow and deep, occasionally thumping his tail when Violet hummed without realizing she was doing it. You sing? Elias said one night. Violet froze. I didn't know I was. It's quiet, he said, but it fills the room. Her cheeks warmed. My mother used to say it helped me remember myself. Elias nodded. Seems like it still does. They spoke more after that. Not confessions, those came later, but small truths exchanged without ceremony. Elias told her about finding Ghost as a half-grown pup, ribs showing, rage in his eyes. How it took weeks of leaving food nearby before the wolf stopped circling with teeth bared. I never tried to break him, Elias said. Just showed him I wasn't going to leave. Violet thought of kitchens where she'd worked twice as hard for half the credit, of rooms where her presence was tolerated only while useful. That makes sense, she said quietly. Ghost shifted, pressing his weight more firmly against her calf. When the first real storm came, it came fast. Snow slammed against the shutters, wind shrieking through the trees like a living thing. Elias secured the doors and banked the fire. Violet stood close, heart racing, memories of nights without heat rising unbidden. It'll hold, Elias said, reading her posture. It always does. She nodded and forced her breathing slow. The storm lasted 3 days. By the second night, Violet realized she was no longer listening for footsteps at the door, no longer bracing for raised voices or sudden cruelty. She was simply there, working, resting, existing without apology. On the third night, Elias handed her a small bundle wrapped in cloth. "Boots," he said. She unfolded them to find leather thick and supple, stitched to the shape of her feet with care that stole her breath. "They'll last," he added, "and they won't hurt you." Her throat tightened. "Thank you." He shrugged, embarrassed. Ill-fitting tools cost more than time. It became something of a refrain. As winter closed in, Violet noticed changes she had not expected. Her hands grew stronger, her posture eased. She ate when she was hungry and stopped when she was done, without counting eyes or measuring worth. When she laughed, it startled her. How easily it came, how little it asked in return. Ghost remained her shadow. One afternoon, Violet slipped on ice near the woodpile. She fell hard, breath knocked from her chest. Before Elias could reach her, Ghost was there, standing over her, ears forward, teeth bared at the empty air, as if daring the mountain itself to try again. "I'm all right," Violet gasped, sitting up. Ghost lowered his head and pressed his forehead briefly against her shoulder. Then he stepped back, business concluded. Elias arrived, eyes sharp. "You hurt?" She shook her head, smiling despite herself. "Apparently, I'm guarded." He let out a short breath that might have been a laugh. "Seems so." That night, as Violet stitched a tear in Elias's coat, she noticed his gaze linger, not on her body, but on her face, as if committing it to memory. "You don't shrink any more," he said. She paused, needle hovering. "I didn't realize I was." "You were," he replied gently. "You don't now." She tied off the thread and set the coat aside. "I think it's because no one here needs me to." He met her eyes. "You don't need to earn space." The words landed, heavy and necessary. Later, as the fire burned low, Violet found herself reaching out, testing, and resting her hand briefly on Elias's forearm. He stilled, then turned his palm upward, offering without pressure. She placed her hand in his. They sat like that for a long time, Ghost asleep at their feet, the mountain holding steady around them. Nothing was declared, nothing was promised, but something had been named, not with words, but with presence. Trust is not built by grand gestures, but by the steady refusal to harm. In spaces where judgment once lived, Patience becomes a language, and care, offered without condition, teaches wounded hearts how to remain. Ask yourself this, quietly. When safety finally appears, do you know how to stay with it? Or does it take time to believe you deserve it? Winter did not arrive all at once. It settled. Snow came first in small, polite measures, an inch at dawn, another by dusk, until the world outside the cabin grew quiet and white and absolute. The mountain closed its doors. Roads vanished. Time slowed to the pace of breath and fire. Inside, the cabin learned new habits. Violet rose before light to coax warmth from embers. She learned the language of the stove, how it liked air, how it punished impatience. Bread rose more reliably now. Stews thickened the way she preferred. She discovered that work done without fear of correction was not work at all, but craft. Elias noticed and stayed out of the way. He let her choose the order of things. When she moved tools to suit her reach, he did not put them back. When she cooked heavier than he had grown used to, he ate without comment and asked for seconds. When she paused in the doorway to watch the weather decide itself, he waited with her. Ghost learned the shape of their days and made himself part of them. He lay at Violet's feet while she chopped vegetables, occasionally lifting his head to watch the knife flash. He followed her to the smokehouse and sat with his back to the door while she worked. At night, he slept between the hearth and her door, a silent sentinel who did not mistake protection for possession. Elias slept in his own room. Always, the choice mattered. On the coldest nights, when the wind hammered the shutters and the fire crackled low, Violet would wake with the old sharp panic, memories of rooms where warmth was conditional, where safety arrived only if she made herself agreeable. She would sit up, breathing carefully, and Ghost would lift his head and thump his tail once, a sound as solid as a promise. The panic would loosen its grip. Violet would lie back down. Ordinary days began to heal her. She learned to split kindling cleanly. She learned to read the sky's moods. She learned that hunger did not need to be hidden and that rest did not have to be justified. Her body, once an enemy, became a tool she trusted, strong, enduring, present. One evening, Elias pushed his plate away and nodded to hers. "You eat first," he said. She hesitated out of habit. He waited. Violet sat back down and finished her meal. The moment passed quietly, but it stayed. Another night, he handed her a mug of coffee and took the smaller cup for himself without explanation. She noticed. She did not protest. They spoke more now, not of trauma, not of vows, but of weather patterns, of recipes, of the strange ways people misunderstand wolves. Elias told her about winters when he spoke to no one for months, when the mountain taught him patience because there was no other option. "People think solitude is empty," he said. "It's not. It's just honest." Violet nodded. "So is this?" He glanced at her, surprised, then smiled, not wide, not practiced, real. The storm that tested them came in January. It arrived at night, sudden and violent. Wind tore at the trees. Snow drove sideways. A branch struck the roof hard enough to make Violet flinch. Elias was up in a breath, checking the door, bracing the shutter, feeding the fire until it roared. "It'll hold," he said again, steady as stone. Violet believed him. Hours later, when the storm finally broke, she realized she had slept through the worst of it, not because she was fearless, but because she was not alone in the way that mattered. The next morning, the world lay buried. They dug together, breath fogging, laughter surprising them both, when Violet slipped and Elias steadied her by the elbow, quick and careful. Ghost bounded through drifts like joy-given teeth. As weeks passed, closeness grew without urgency. Their hands brushed while passing bowls. Elias learned to read the set of Violet's shoulders, when she needed quiet, when she wanted company. Violet learned the small signs of Elias's moods, the way he sharpened too long when worried, the way he went silent before a storm. One afternoon, Violet caught her reflection in the window, rosy-cheeked from work, hair escaping its tie, bodice solid and present. She did not look away. Later, Elias said quietly, "You look different." She tensed. "How?" "Like someone who knows where she stands." She swallowed. "I think I do." The night the fire burned low and the kettle sang, Violet reached out, testing, and rested her hand on Elias's wrist. He stilled, then turned his palm upward in a wordless invitation. She placed her hand in his. They sat like that for a long time. No rush, no claim. Ghost slept nearby, breath slow and deep. When Violet finally withdrew, Elias did not reach to keep her. He only nodded, a promise without pressure. That was how love learned them, by restraint. By February, the days lengthened. Violet found herself humming while she worked. One evening, Elias paused mid-task. "You sing," he said. She laughed softly. "I guess I do." "It fills the cabin," he replied, "in a good way." She felt warmth bloom, slow and certain. The kiss did not happen that night. It came later, during a blizzard that turned the world to white noise. Violet was mending a tear in Elias's shirt. He was carving a handle, curls of wood piling at his feet. "I don't want you to leave," he said suddenly. She looked up. "I wasn't planning to." "When spring comes," he continued, eyes steady, "when the road opens, I want you to stay, not as a worker, as my wife." The word landed softly. He did not kneel. He did not plead. He offered. Violet set the needle down. Her heart hammered, not with fear, but with clarity. "I choose you," she said, "and this life, if you'll have me." He crossed the room in 2 strides and kissed her, gentle, unhurried, certain. Ghost yawned and rolled onto his back, unconcerned. Winter began to loosen its grip. Healing is not loud. It arrives in habits rewritten, in meals eaten without apology, in hands offered and not taken away. Love that lasts does not rush the wounded. It waits until staying feels possible. Spring came with meltwater and strangers. The first rider appeared at the edge of the clearing just after noon, his horse blowing hard from the climb. He did not approach the cabin. He did not call out. He sat and watched, as if measuring the place by eye alone. Ghost sensed him before Violet did. The wolf rose from the hearth and moved to the door, ears forward, the low sound in his chest no longer curious. Elias followed Ghost's gaze and went still. "Inside," he said to Violet quietly. She obeyed, but not before memorizing the way Elias's shoulders squared, the way his hand rested near the rifle without touching it. The rider left an hour later, turning back down the trail without a word. That night, Elias did not sleep. Violet knew because she heard him moving, slow and deliberate, checking the shutters, counting ammunition, standing at the door long after the fire had settled. She waited until dawn before speaking. "Who was he?" Elias's jaw tightened. "Someone looking for a story." "And will they find one?" "That depends," he said, "on whether the past decides to walk up here." He told her then, because it was time. About Cutter Boone. about the claim dispute years back, the brother who drew first, the verdict that favored self-defense in a town eager to move on, about how men like Cutter did not care for verdicts when pride bled. "I didn't run," Elias said. "I came up here to stop living by other people's noise." Violet listened, hands folded, heart steadying rather than racing. "If he comes," she asked, "what happens?" Elias met her eyes. "I won't let harm reach you." "That's not what I asked." He considered her, really considered her, then answered honestly, "Then there will be a reckoning." Days passed. Then another rider came, this one bold enough to approach the fence line. He left no message, only tracks pressed deep into wet earth, a deliberate sign meant to be read. The mountain grew tense. Even the birds kept wider circles. Violet felt the pull of an old instinct, the urge to disappear, to make herself smaller so danger might slide past. She recognized it now for what it was. She did not obey it. Instead, she prepared. She learned to load the rifle properly. Elias showed her once and stepped back. She practiced until her hands stopped shaking. She learned where the ground dipped and where a shot would carry. She learned how Ghost moved when danger was real, not frantic, not wild, but focused. One evening, as they cleaned tools at the table, Violet spoke the thought she had been carrying. "If this gets worse," she said, "I can leave." Elias looked up sharply. "No. I'm not saying I want to," she continued. "I'm saying I won't be the reason blood comes to your door." He pushed his chair back and stood. "You are not a reason. You are my family." Family. The word changed the air. Violet held his gaze. "Then treat me like it. Let me choose too." Silence stretched, thick and honest. Ghost watched them both, head tilted, as if weighing the exchange. Elias exhaled slowly. "All right," he said. "We choose together." They fortified without drama. Caches checked, paths cleared, signals agreed upon. Violet moved through the work with calm resolve, her body sure, her mind present. She was no longer waiting to be saved. She was standing where she belonged. The riders came at dusk 3 days later, 4 men this time, armed, spread wide. Cutter Boone rode at their center, Scar pulling his mouth into something that might have been a smile. "Elias Thorne," Cutter called. "You owe me." Elias stepped into the clearing, rifle low but ready. Violet stood just inside the doorway, Ivy asleep against her chest, Ghost at her knee. "There's nothing here for you," Elias said. "Turn around." Cutter laughed. "That wolf yours?" His eyes slid to Violet. "And the woman? Shame. I didn't come to take things." He raised his revolver. "I came to settle." Time tightened. Ghost moved first, not charging, not lunging. He placed himself squarely between Cutter and the cabin, hackles up, eyes locked. "Call him off," Cutter sneered. Elias did not answer. Violet felt the weight of the moment settle, not fear, but choice. She stepped forward just enough to be seen. "This ends now," she said, voice steady. "You don't get to decide our lives because you refuse to accept the past." Cutter's gaze flicked to her, surprised, then amused. "You talk brave for someone standing behind a beast." Violet lifted the rifle, not aimed, not yet, but unmistakable. "I'm not behind him." Cutter's men shifted. The mountain held its breath. The shot that broke the moment came from Cutter's side, an impatient man, twitchy with nerves. The bullet tore bark from a tree. Ghost exploded forward. What followed was fast and terrible and brief. The wolf struck with precision, not frenzy. Elias fired twice, each shot placed. Violet held her ground, heart hammering but hand steady, until the riders broke and fled, dragging wounded pride and blood with them. Cutter Boone fell in the clearing, breath rattling, eyes fixed on the sky. Elias stood over him, rifle lowered. "Go," he said quietly, "and don't come back." Cutter spat blood, then laughed weakly. "You always were merciful." Elias did not answer. The mountain reclaimed the silence. They buried nothing that night. There was nothing to bury. The riders were gone, and with them the illusion that this life could be kept without cost. Later, as the fire burned low, Violet sat with Elias, Ghost stretched at their feet. "You could have killed him," she said. "I could have," Elias replied. "I chose not to." She nodded. "So did I." They sat in the quiet that followed violence, the kind that asks questions without demanding answers. Sacrifice is not always surrender. Sometimes it is restraint, the refusal to become what threatens you. When love is tested, it does not ask who will strike first, but who will stand still long enough to choose mercy. Ask yourself this: if protecting what you love meant risking everything you built, would you fight, or would you walk away to keep your hands clean? The mountain did not forget. 2 weeks passed after Cutter Boone limped away, and the world pretended to be ordinary again. Snowmelt ran loud. Birds returned to the lower branches. Violet baked bread and planted the first seeds in the garden soil, pressing them down with steady hands. But Ghost did not relax. He patrolled wider circles now, stopping often to scent the wind. His ears flicked at sounds Violet could not hear. Elias watched him with the practiced calm of a man who understood warnings long before they arrived. "They'll try once more," Elias said one evening, not as prophecy but as fact. "Men like him don't leave loose ends." Violet wiped her hands on her apron. "Then we don't leave ourselves loose either." They prepared without panic. Elias checked the caches and reinforced the shutter hinges. Violet packed the cellar with food and water and moved the baby's cradle to the safest corner. They agreed on signals, on positions, on what each of them would do if the other fell. It was not romantic. It was love in its most honest form. The riders came at dawn. Not 4 this time. 7. They crested the trail in a line meant to intimidate, rifles visible, horses pushing hard. Cutter Boone rode at the center, pale and tight with fury, a bandage still dark beneath his coat. "This ends today," he shouted as they reached the clearing. "No more warnings." Elias stepped forward alone, rifle held low. "Turn back." Cutter laughed, sharp and bitter. "You had your chance." A man on Cutter's left dismounted and raised his weapon toward the cabin. Ghost moved. He did not charge wildly. He angled, fast, precise, forcing the man to fire wide. Elias answered with a shot that shattered the rifle stock. Another rider went down, screaming, clutching his leg. The clearing erupted. Gunfire cracked against stone. Horses screamed and bolted. Violet stood firm in the doorway, rifle braced, breath controlled the way Elias had taught her. She did not fire until a rider broke toward the cabin. Then she did. The shot struck earth inches from the man's boots. He skidded to a stop, eyes wide, and turned back the way he'd come. Cutter saw it all. "You taught her well," he snarled, "but you're still just delaying the inevitable." He spurred forward, revolver raised. Elias met him halfway, stepping into the open where the mountain offered no cover. "This doesn't have to be blood," he said. "Leave." Cutter fired. The bullet grazed Elias's shoulder, spinning him sideways. Violet's heart leapt, but Elias stayed on his feet, jaw set, eyes never leaving Cutter. Ghost lunged, tackling Cutter's horse at the chest. Man and animal went down in a tangle. Cutter hit the ground hard, revolver skittering away. Silence fell, sudden and heavy. The remaining riders froze. Some were already backing away, the fight draining out of them as quickly as it had come. Elias stood over Cutter, rifle lowered but ready. Violet stepped forward then, slow and deliberate, rifle still braced at her shoulder, not aimed at Cutter, but unmistakably present. "This is where it ends," she said. "You don't come back. You don't send others. You let the mountain keep what it's taken." Cutter looked up at her, shock breaking through his rage. "You think you decide?" Violet did not raise her voice. "No, we decide." Ghost stood at her side, muzzle inches from Cutter's face, eyes bright and unblinking. Cutter swallowed. He looked at the men who had come with him, some wounded, all shaken, and understood the truth settling around him like cold. "You win," he spat. "This time." Elias stepped back. "There won't be another." Cutter struggled to his feet, helped by one of his men. They gathered what pride they could and retreated down the trail, leaving blood and noise behind them. The mountain closed. Later, when the clearing was quiet again, Violet's hands shook. She set the rifle down and pressed her palms together until the trembling eased. Elias reached for her, not to pull her close, but to meet her where she stood. "You were steady," he said. "So were you," she replied. Ghost returned to the hearth and lay down. Watch resumed. That night they sat by the fire with the baby asleep between them, the quiet deeper than before. Violet leaned her head against Elias's shoulder and felt the truth of what they had chosen. Strength, she realized, was not the ability to destroy what threatened you. It was the discipline to stop before you became it. True strength is not measured by the blows we strike, but by the boundaries we hold. When danger comes calling, courage asks not who will win, but who will remain human when winning is possible. Autumn arrived gently, as if the mountain itself were offering an apology. The air softened. The wind lost its edge. Aspen leaves turned gold and drifted down the trail like small, deliberate blessings. After the violence, after the tension that had lived in every shadow, the quiet felt earned, but never careless. Violet learned the shape of peace, the way she had learned the shape of fear, slowly, with attention. Mornings returned to their old rituals. Bread rose in its bowl. Coffee steamed in tin cups. Ghost lay by the door, eyes half-lidded, but never fully asleep. Elias checked the traps and came back with stories of the land, where the elk had moved, where the river had cut a new path. The cabin held warmth again. Violet hung herbs from the rafters and stitched a second quilt for the coming winter. She caught her reflection in the small mirror by the wash basin and no longer flinched. The woman who looked back at her was solid, capable, and unafraid of taking up space. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the clearing in amber, Elias stood in the doorway and watched her rock the baby to sleep. "You're home here," he said, not as a question, but as a truth he wanted her to hear aloud. Violet looked up, eyes bright. "So are you." They sat together by the fire after the child slept, the quiet punctuated only by the soft crackle of wood. Outside, the forest breathed. "Do you ever think about leaving?" Violet asked. Elias considered it honestly. "Sometimes. Not to run. Just to see what the world looks like now. And then I look at this place, at you." He reached for her hand. and I realize I don't need the world to be smaller or kinder. I just need this. Violet squeezed his fingers. I used to think home was something you earned by being acceptable. Thin enough, quiet enough, useful enough. And now? Now I think home is where you are allowed to exist without apology. Elias nodded. That's the best definition I've ever heard. The winter came early that year. Snow sealed the cabin in white, thick and deep. The world shrank to firelight and breath and shared warmth. Violet sang softly as she worked, her voice steady and unafraid. Elias listened from his chair, pretending not to, pretending the sound did not reach somewhere tender in his chest. One night, as the storm howled and the roof groaned under its weight, Violet woke and found Elias already awake, staring into the dark. "Still listening for riders?" she asked gently. "Always," he admitted. She took his hand and pressed it over her heart. "Then listen to this too." He did. The days passed. No riders came. Spring would come again, or it would not. The mountain made no promises. Neither did life. But the cabin stayed lit. And if danger ever returned, if the past ever found its way back up the trail, they would meet it together, not with bravado, not with fear, but with the quiet certainty of people who had already chosen one another. Home is not the absence of danger, it is the presence of trust. It is the place where you are seen without judgment and held without condition. Home is not built from walls or locks, but from the courage to stay. So ask yourself this: if the world turned its back on you tomorrow, where would you stand? And who would stand beside you? Every time a story like this is told, it travels farther than the mountains it describes. It crosses borders, languages, and quiet moments where someone listens and recognizes themselves in the struggle to be seen, to be chosen, to be safe. These stories are not about the past. They are about the courage it takes to build a home inside a world that does not always make room for kindness. Where are you listening from today? A city, a village, a place between journeys? If you still believe love can be fierce without being cruel and strong without being loud, then stay. The next story is already waiting for you.